Very good afternoon to all. Thank you for being here today. Welcome to Tally CA Connect. Our today's topic of discussion is on the need of the hour, which is on the new provisions of the MSME Act and the payment compliances. And Tally has also come up with an upgrade to help comply with this requirement seamlessly. So as we could see the many queries on the provisions and in our CA community WhatsApp group, so we decided to schedule this session at our CA Connect. Our expert for today is CA Vikash Parakh. Vikash sir is a practicing CA for over 20 years now in the areas of audit, law, and taxation. He specializes in GST, corporate restructuring, real valuer, real estate, project consultancy, internal audit, and the list is endless. He is also an IBBI registered valuer and conducts valuation and securities of financial assets. We are grateful to him for being a Tally evangelist and has curated today's session on resolving the queries on the MSME domain and also help us go through the new product that is TallyPrime 4.1. We also have Pankaj Kumar Pathak and Rajagopal sir from our product expert team who will be helping with the queries on our new product and to make sure that your experience in our new product is seamless. So thank you, Vikas sir, for taking out time from your very busy schedule. And so to the audience, as you know that we have a product expert with us, please do direct your queries to Q&A only. So as and when during the flow, Vikas sir will take a few. If your queries is different or basis on your own practical scenarios, we will take it up definitely. But please put it in the Q&A so that we can have a track of your queries and make sure that we answer them all. Please do not put your queries in the chat. Use chat only for the queries or the comments Vikas sir asks you to. Yeah, so let's have a very good interactive session. Thank you so much. Thank you, Vikas sir. Over to you.
Thank you, Komalji. So at the outset, I would like to thank Tally for providing me an opportunity to share my views on the really burning topic in the current scenario, the MSME, and of course how Tally is helping, in this in managing the MSME related payments and outstandings. So a very good afternoon to all of you. Well, it's indeed a pleasure to share my views amongst all of you. So what we will do is that we will, in this today's session, we will be speaking about the MSME domain part also, that what is the law surrounding MSME, whether it is MSME Act, Income Tax Act, Companies Act, or whatever is the law surrounding that. And we will also then take up, we will go through the product also, the latest release 4.1, which supports many reports which are related to MSME compliance. So I'll be starting. I can just see some of the participants are mentioning that voice is slow. Is it in general the voice is slow, or everyone it's audible for all? If some of you can just mention if its voice is audible.
No, so okay. Actually the voice is audible. I was about to type to Mr. Mohammed.
Okay, then it's okay. Yeah. Okay. So as Komalji told you, you all can, put in your questions about the domain or the product in the Q&A part, as and when during the session or after the session, we will definitely take up all the queries to the extent possible. So I'll just start the presentation. So first we'll move to the MSME domain. Well, you all know that what is the importance of MSME in our country. The thrust of the government has been since past many years on the MSMEs. They have launched many schemes, even for tender portal and all for MSME separate portals. So somehow the government is thinking that since the MSMEs are the backbone of the economy, so they really want to facilitate them in their business, and in the course of this, they have brought in several measures apart from MSME Act also. So briefly, let us discuss about just a sec. That what kind of MSME enterprises they can register. So one is micro, small, and medium. So for micro, small and medium, there is a composite criteria of investment and turnover. There is a slab of investment and turnover. If your investment in plant and machinery is up to 1 crore and the annual turnover is also up to 5 crores, then you can register as micro. Similarly, the limit goes up for small enterprises. The investment limit in plant and machinery is 10 crores and the annual turnover should be up to 50 crores. And for medium enterprises, the same goes for investment 50 crores and the annual turnover should be up to 250 crore rupees. So this is the criteria for micro, small and medium enterprises. Mind you that this investment is only in plant and machinery and not in any land or building or similar other assets or current assets. It only takes this criteria of plant and machinery, and this plant machinery value should also be the depreciated value, the written down value, which is appearing in the preceding year's income tax return. So at the time you are taking the registration, or maybe even after taking the registration, if suppose your limit goes up, then you need to reclassify yourself. So this is only for plant and machinery. And the turnover means your business turnover. This 5 crore, 50 crore, 250 crore limit is for the business turnover. And as per the MSMED notification, this excludes exports because their thrust is, a domestic business. So excluding the export turnover, if your turnover is falling within these limits, accordingly, you can classify yourself and register. Now you can see here, it is for manufacturing enterprises and enterprises rendering services. So what about traders? You all must be aware that there are many traders who have also registered under this MSMED Act and obtained UDYAM number, registration number. But the Act speaks only about manufacturing enterprises and service providers. So basically, the retailers or the wholesalers, the traders were allowed to register on MSME by the government only for the limited purpose of some benefits of priority sector lending, maybe an interest subvention on the loan which they are taking from the bank, but no other benefit, including the benefit of interest on delayed payment or the due date of payment, is not available to traders. So the traders, when the traders are registering as an MSME, they are only they get this benefit of priority sector lending only and no other benefit. So we'll move forward. So this, I believe, is very clear to you that MSME registration involves certain steps. I'm not going into the details. You know how to get the registration on the portal. You can submit certain declarations and you can get this registration from the portal. Of course, based on the turnover and the investment criteria of plant and machinery, which is obtained from your income tax returns and the GST returns, which are fetched by the MSME portal. Next, we move to what are the benefits of MSME registration? Well, there are benefits, as I told you, there are priority sector lending benefits, there are interest subsidies on loan, then there are certain other subsidies also of the government. There are certain government schemes. If you are registered under MSME, then only you can avail that. And one of the most important benefit for MSMEs is that there is a certain due date, which we will be speaking about, within which their customers have to make the payment. Otherwise, some interest, penal interest is applicable on the same. So our whole session is basically, will be revolving around this aspect of MSME benefit, which has been given by the government to the MSMEs. And we will just move towards that. So I just have received a question from Pankaj Deshpande ji. Good afternoon, Pankaj ji. Nice to see you here. What is a person? What if a person is a service provider as well as trader also? a person selling Tally software and also providing Tally services. Pankaj ji, in that case, if your MSME registration speaks that you are a service provider, if you say that the MSME registration is as a service provider, then on the invoices on which you are providing service, you can claim the benefit. But as far as your trading is concerned, those trading invoices won't get that benefit of delayed penal interest. Well, I think the voice is clear, but I'll try to make it a bit louder. And I hope you're comfortable, or everyone is comfortable in English, or I can use Hindi also at times, as comfortable to everyone. So we will move forward. So as I told you, one of the major benefits enjoyed by entities is the timely payment of their dues. Now, what happens if this benefit is available only to micro and small enterprises? Let me tell you, this benefit of delayed payment is not available to medium enterprises, even if they register under MSMED Act. So this is very important for us to understand that this is available to micro and small enterprises only. And this benefit, as I told, is not available to traders. So we move to section 15 of MSMED Act. First, we move to the MSMED Act. What does the MSMED Act tells? The MSMED Act says that where any supplier supplies any goods or renders any services, the buyer shall make the payment on or before the date agreed upon between the supplier and the buyer in writing, and where there is no agreement, then before the appointed day. We'll come to what is appointed day. So basically, they also say that in case there is no agreed upon period between supplier and buyer in writing, then before the appointed date you have to make the payment, and where there is any agreement in writing, then the days should not exceed 45 days. So let's come to what is appointed date now. Appointed day means the day following immediately after expiry of the period of 15 days from the date of acceptance. So what is the date of acceptance? It is the date of actual delivery of goods or rendering of services, and where any objection is made in writing by the buyer, then within 15 days, then when the objection is removed, that is taken as the date of acceptance. So very simply, I will explain you one thing. Let's say there can be two scenarios. One where there is a written kind of an documentation or agreement between the buyer and seller that this is the agreed term between us. Agreed term can be 60 days, can be 90 days, can be 15 days, 45 days. It cannot exceed 45 days for the purpose of MSMED Act. But if there is no such written agreement, then the payment has to be made within 15 days. So basically, in normal scenario, we take 2 days. One is 15 days and one is 45 days. So if there is written agreement, 15 days. If there is no written agreement, 45 days. From where? From the date of delivery of goods or rendering of services, not from the date of invoice. I've heard many people, they are confused that from the date of invoice, they have to take 45 days or 15 days. But mind you, you have to take it from the date of delivery of goods or from the completion of services which you are receiving. So this is one thing. Now there is another proviso which says, if suppose you received the goods and you have made any objection as a buyer, if there is some defect in the goods and you are not accepting the goods, and that objection is made within 15 days from the date of receipt of goods, then until that objection is removed, the calculation of 15 or 45 days will not start. So suppose you have received goods today, you made an objection to the buyer, to the seller, that there is some defect in the goods, maybe within 15 days, maybe after 10 days, then that defect is not removed and the resolution, the issue is not resolved till 1 month also. So then the day on which it is resolved, let's say 1 month after you raise the objection, from that date, if it's a written agreement, then 45 days is the time limit for payment. Otherwise, it is 15 days from that date. So this, all things you have to keep in mind, is revolves around from the date of delivery, right? So there are certain more questions. If are relevant to the slides, I'll be taking it. Income tax related, I'll just, someone has mentioned that if a trader has registered as MSME in the MSME as a manufacturer, if you are registered as a manufacturer and if your invoice is relating to manufactured goods, sale invoice, then you can avail this benefit. तो अब हम आगे बढ़ते हैं और we see some scenarios, हम कुछ scenarios भी देखेंगे. What are those scenarios? So उससे क्या होगा कि the picture will be a bit clear. We take two scenarios. First scenario is where no written agreement exists, where there is no written agreement. I'll come to what is written agreement. Suppose the date of order was anything, it is immaterial here. The date of supply was 3rd February. Means 3rd February को आपके पास goods receive हुए. You received the goods on 3rd February. The credit period was nil because since there was no written documentation for the credit period कि कितने दिन allowed है, तो credit period nil था. कोई objection आपने नहीं किया. There was no objection in writing. So the deemed acceptance date becomes 3rd February and the payment has to be made within 15 days from the 3rd February, which is 18th February. So the due date in this case becomes 18th February. Appointed date is, as per law, is 1 day after the due date of payment. So the appointed date is 19th February, but you need to be concerned with the due date, which is 15 days from the acceptance date. Goods जिस दिन receive हुए उससे 15 दिन के अंदर में आपको ये पेमेंट करना होगा in this case. Now we come to the second scenario where although there is no credit period, written credit period, but you have made an objection within 15 days. 3rd February you received the goods. Objection in writing you made on 10th February, which is within 15 days, of course, within 7 days you made the objection. The objection was removed on 12th of February. Now, this objection can be removed in 15 days, 20 days, 1 month, 2 months. There is no time limit for removal of objection. But for creation of objection, for raising of objection, the time limit is 15 days. So we see that the removal of objection in this case was done on 12th Feb and the payment is 15 days from 12th Feb, that is 27th Feb. So removal किया जिस दिन आपने, उसके बाद within 15 days 27 तारीख के अंदर आपको पेमेंट करना है. एक और थर्ड केस लेते हैं. There is a third case where the objection has been raised after 15 days. 3rd February you received the goods. You made the objection on 20th February, 17 days after receipt of goods. And you removed the objection on 22nd February. Since the objection was made beyond 15 days, the time limit of 15 days from the receipt of goods, this will not be considered and the due date will be counted from the date of receipt of goods. क्योंकि आपने रिमूवल किया, ऑब्जेक्शन रेज किया 15 दिन के बाद में, 17 दिन के बाद में, which is beyond the time limit of 15 days, तो आपके लिए 3 फरवरी से ही 15 दिन देखकर 18 फरवरी को आपका ड्यू डेट होता है. सो दिस वाज अ केस जहां पे कोई भी रिटर्न डॉक्यूमेंटेशन नहीं है कि आपका क्रेडिट पीरियड इतना है, 20 दिन है, 25 दिन है, 60 दिन है, 90 दिन है. उस केस में 15 डेज डिफॉल्ट लिया जाए. Now we come to another scenario where there is a written documentation or agreement which exists. Written documentation exists करता है. Credit period, यहाँ पे आप देखिए in the first scenario, same scenario, 3rd February you received the goods. Okay, 3rd February you received the goods. Credit period allowed is 60 days. The terms between the buyer and the seller is 60 days. So the due date as per your terms is 4th of April. क्योंकि 3rd February को गुड्स आया आपके पास, सेलर ने बोला कि 60 दिन के बाद आप हमको पेमेंट कर सकते हो. एज अ बायर आपके पास एज पर टर्म्स ऑफ अग्रीमेंट टाइम है कि आप 4 अप्रैल तक उसको पेमेंट कर सकते हो विद इन 60 डेज. देयर इज नो ऑब्जेक्शन सपोज हैज बीन मेड, but as per the MSMED Act, the maximum agreed term cannot go beyond 45 days. So 3rd February से 45 days, the due date for payment becomes 19th March. So by 19th March, you have to make this payment as per MSMED Act. Now we come to another scenario. Here also you see in all these scenarios we have considered the credit period which has been allowed by the seller is 60 days, right? But in this case, you made an objection within 15 days. आपने उस पिछले बार की तरह, आपने सिनेरियो की तरह यहाँ भी 10 फरवरी के अंदर आपने रेज कर दिया ऑब्जेक्शन. 15 दिन के अंदर 12 फरवरी को आपने ऑब्जेक्शन रिमूव कर दिया. Now 45 days from 12th February, that is 28th March is the due date when you are allowed to pay that. तो प्रीवियस सिनेरियो में आपने देखा क्योंकि रिटर्न अग्रीमेंट नहीं था तो 12 फरवरी से 15 दिन आपको 27 के अंदर में MSMED एक्ट के हिसाब से करना पड़ेगा पेमेंट. बट इस केस में आपका जो पेमेंट है वो 12 फरवरी से 45 डेज अलाउड है, which comes to let's say 28th March. तो तब तक you can make the payment. And in third scenario, you have made an objection, but the objection was made after 15 days from the receipt of goods. So this will not be considered. तो ये पहले सिनेरियो की तरह 3rd February से 45 days which is 19th March के अंदर में आपका ये हो जाना चाहिए. So now we come to a very important question, that what does written agreement means. What is written agreement? So do you think that written agreement always means something which has to be done on a bond paper or a stamp paper or something like that? Well, written agreement does not necessarily mean that it has to be done on an executed on a stamp paper. Written agreement means the buyer and seller should concur on something, and this should be documented. Let's say the buyer issues a purchase order to the seller कि ये मेरा purchase order है, and in that purchase order it is clearly mentioned that the due date of payment is, let's say, 60 days from the receipt of goods. So then this is also a written agreement, but it should be communicated from both ends. It should be accepted by the seller also. Similarly, let's say even before the purchase order, the seller sends you a kind of a terms of agreement or a quotation, and in that quotation it is written that the terms of payment is 60 days. Or even if suppose purchase order is not there, or the quotation is not there, and in the invoice the seller raises an invoice, and in the invoice it is mentioned that the due date of payment is 60 days, and that invoice is received and accepted by the buyer, that also is an agreement, and it is in writing. So you just cannot say कि verbally मेरा बात हो गया था, सेलर ने मेरे को बोला था, अलाउ किया कि मैं 90 दिन में पेमेंट कर सकता हूं, तो इसलिए मेरे को 45 दिन मिलना चाहिए. That thing won't hold good. Something written documentation should be there. It can be a general email also. Suppose आपके invoices के अंदर में नहीं है, but before the invoices were raised, before these transactions happened, एक email exchange हो गया buyer और seller के बीच कि भाई whatever transactions will happen throughout the year, या जो भी सेल होगी उसके अंदर the terms of payment will be 60 days, 90 days, 180 days, 45 days, जो भी है from the receipt of goods या invoice या जो भी है. So these things can these things can these things matter actually. So you have to consider that what is the written document which you can evidence that this is the credit limit which was agreed between the buyer and the seller. This is very important. This verbal thing won't work, but it is not necessary that on each and every document it is mentioned that on each and every invoice 60 days, 60 days, no. But some documentation should be there, which is, prior to the invoice, prior to the sending of goods, or in the PO or in the quotation invoice, it should be there. Okay, I'll consider the request to speak mostly in English. No issues on that. So we move next. Now, MSMED Act. Now, before we move to the penal consequences, there are few questions which I would like to take, which are related to already, which I have discussed. Of course, the 44 AD and all I'll take up when I take up income tax. If service rendered, say, on 1st March, but invoice received on 31st March, then from which date? See, as I told you that the MSMED Act says that from the rendering of service, they will count. Invoice does not matter. So if the invoice service is rendered on 1st of March, then the days limit of 45, 15 days will be counted from that date. What is the use of appointed day? Well, Amitji, appointed day is defined under MSMED Act, which says that the MSMED Act says that the appointed day is the date from 15 days from the date of acceptance, and the payment has to be made before the appointed date. So appointed date is 1 day after the date of acceptance. If the objection is related to partial goods in the invoice, then how to deal? For full invoice or partial value? Well, if you have raised the objection for partial goods, so then the due date of payment always will be proportionate. Even in case where suppose you have made a partial payment within due date and partial not made within due date, then also proportionately for the payment which you have not made within due date, the consequences will follow. The GST query we can take up in the end. I will not get into GST right now. Yes, it means date of receipt of goods. How to check if any vendor is MSME registered or not? I'll take this up. How to check if any vendor is MSME registered or not? You will, as of now on the portal, the only mechanism is that you have to put UDYAM Aadhaar number there. You have to put UDYAM Aadhaar number, and from that UDYAM number, you can check whether he is there or not. But once you get the UDYAM number, you can just verify. Suppose if you want to check based on some other criteria, maybe PAN, then normally on the portal, as far as my knowledge goes and I am aware, there is no direct tool which from PAN you can check whether the person is MSME registered or not. But there is a kind of workaround which I am not sure whether it is effective for you or not. You can, go through the registration portal, put your Aadhaar, and when you go for registration, you put the PAN. And when you put the PAN, if it is a PAN which is already registered under MSME, it will show you that this is registered. So this is a workaround which you can use, but there is no directly PAN-based search as of now to check MSME. Of course, you can, go and, maybe there might be some APIs which can help you, and you can also, ask your vendor, all your vendors. In fact, this I'll be covering up later also. So now I'll move forward and take up the rest of the questions later. So one first penalty is rate at which interest is payable. Now, if you delay under MSMED Act beyond the 15 or 45-day period, then 3 times the bank rate notified by RBI has to be paid, which is compounded monthly. Currently, I think the RBI bank rate is 6.75, so 3.3 times of that, 20.25% compounded monthly has to be paid. Now, very importantly, it is not only about payment, as there are many chartered accountants also here, and they they are attending, and they must be aware that as an auditor, we also need to, check whether this interest has been provided in the books or not. So if there is any delay under MSMED Act provisions for payment to any vendor, then the interest provision also has to be made in the books of account based on this interest rate of 3 times, and irrespective of whether the buyer and seller have an agreed term of 180 days, 1 year, or whatever, this interest has to be provided in the books of accounts. Otherwise, the report might have to be, there have to be a disclaimer given in the report or in the notes, wherever you find, whether in the emphasis of matter, that has to be checked into. But this is one thing, and most importantly, this interest is not allowed as a deduction under income tax. So even if you pay this interest, then also this interest is, or provide this interest is not allowed as a deduction under income tax. So I'll move next. We come to, this was the consequences under MSMED Act. There is a, there is what I should say, there is a portal also, MSME Samadhan, which helps, the buyers who want to claim this interest and lodge complaints and all from there. So this was about MSMED Act. The MSMED Act के अंदर में what benefits you can claim for interest, and if you are a buyer, then this is the liability which you have to provide in your books. Now we come to income tax, which is the most important part of current scenario. Many of you, first thing I would like to tell, many of you I've been hearing that this has been deferred for next year, 1st April 2024, 25 it will be applicable maybe, or 25 onwards, and not for 23, 24. I also read certain articles on very prominent websites that these are being deferred and so forth and so on. But let me tell you one thing, that as of now, there is no official announcement about this deferment. And today, the law which stands today is that this act, this provision of section 43BH is applicable for financial year 23-24. Okay, so now what is covered under this? 43B primarily is a section which speaks about certain payments and deductions, which are certain deductions which are allowed on payment basis. Normally, you all must be aware, many of us here are chartered accountants also, and business owners also, who are aware that suppose there are certain payments like taxes, or employees and employers' contribution to PF and ESI, interest to financial institutions. All these are allowed on payment basis. But suppose these are allowed on payment basis in certain cases, like bonus, payment of bonus. If you provide the bonus to employees in March, but you have got time till the due date of filing of your return for claiming this expenditure in the previous year. But in case of MSME, what they have done is that if there is certain outstanding bills as on 31st March 2024, which are pertaining to micro or small enterprises registered under MSMED Act, then you have to pay them within the due date of 15 or 45 days, whatever is applicable. Otherwise, this will be disallowed as an expenditure and will be added back to your computation of income for financial year 23-24. Simply said, सबसे पहले आपको क्या देखना है कि whether वो माइक्रो है कि स्मॉल है कि मीडियम है. If the vendor, the creditor from whom you are purchasing goods or availing services is a medium enterprise, then no issue. Income tax, no issue, no disallowance. Just take it out of the pool. Next, you see who are left with are micro and small. Under micro or small, you see those who are traders, registered as traders. Remove them also from this ambit, let's say. Now you are left with micro or small enterprise who are manufacturers or service providers, and those outstandings which are there on 31st March and you have not paid them within the due date, whether the due date was within March or after March and you have not paid. So in those cases, what will happen is that you won't be allowed this deduction in that year, but it will be allowed as a deduction in the year in which you pay. We will come to that. We will show you certain scenarios, how it will work. So we see here, what is happening is, there are certain scenarios. Let's say the invoice date is in current financial year. Current financial year, we mean 23-24. The due date also falls under current financial year. The actual payment date falls also under current financial year and it is paid on or before the due date. So the deduction is allowed in current financial year. Second scenario also same. Everything was under current financial year, but we have paid after the due date. But since we have paid within 31st March 2024, although after the due date, still it will be allowed in the financial year 23-24. Now we see another thing. The invoice is in current financial year, the due date is also under current financial year, but actual payment has been made in next financial year after the due date. So in this case, the deduction will be allowed in next financial year because it was outstanding as on 31st March and it is not paid within due date. So it will be paid in next financial. It will be allowed in next financial year 24-25. Similarly, if you see that in the current financial year, the due date is in next financial year, but you have paid. I am taking the last scenario. The invoice date is in current financial year, the due date is in next financial year, let's say April. Actual payment is also made within next financial year, but after due date, then also it won't be allowed as a deduction. So we will look into certain allowance disallowance scenarios. This will make you clear. You can just go through this once. Sorry. Yeah. Just a second. So let's say the delivery date is 1st March. Okay. The due date comes as 15th April. And let's assume that the invoice date and delivery date is also the same in this case. The due date is 15th April, let's say. Actual date of payment is 14th April. You have made this was outstanding on 31st March. You have made the payment after 31st March, but within the due date. So this deduction will be allowed in financial year 23-24 itself. Second scenario, same scenario, 15th April is the due date, but you have paid after 15th April. So this deduction won't be allowed in 23-24, it will be disallowed, but it will be allowed in 24-25. Again, we come to third scenario. 1st March is the date, delivery date. Due date is, let's say, 15 days. Suppose there was no agreement, or the agreed period also was 15 days. Understand here one more thing. Suppose the agreed period between the buyer and seller is 15 days, yeah, 20 days, yeah, 25 days. Then you cannot claim the benefit of 45 days. 45 days is the maximum. Suppose between the buyer seller, the term agreed is 15 days. Even if it is in writing, but agreed term of 15 days, so you won't be allowed 45 days. In that case, MSME Act due date falls for within 15 days only. So suppose for 1st March, whether it is agreement or written agreement, let's say the due date is 15 days. So 16th March was the due date. You made the payment on 31st of March. Suppose last date आया, आपने देखा इतना सारा आउटस्टैंडिंग है, चलो मैं 31st मार्च को क्लियर कर देता हूँ, मेरा करंट रेशियो भी सुधर जाएगा, MSME एक्ट का पेमेंट भी हो जाएगा. So what happens? 31st March is the actual date of payment. So even though you are making the payment after due date, but since it is made within the year, the deduction is allowed for income tax purposes in 23-24. But in the other scenario, the due date was 16th March, you made the payment on 1st April. Since on 31st March it was outstanding, for the purpose of income tax section 43B, it will be allowed in the next financial year and not in financial year 23-24. Certain things I would like to mention here. I also saw a question that what about the bills prior to 1st April 2023, which is outstanding, right? So if there is, a bill which is outstanding as on 1st April 2023 itself, means prior to 1st April 23, that does not affect this income tax disallowance purpose because you are not claiming the deduction of that bill in 23-24. So it is immaterial for that purposes, right? So that is immaterial. It will not affect the disallowance if it is a bill prior to 1st April 23. So old bills of earlier years, no disallowance. Now, there can be another scenario that the invoice was raised by the vendor when he was not registered under MSMED Act. But as on 31st March, he is registered under MSMED Act. There can be a scenario. Let's say the bill was of December, you did not pay, it is still outstanding on 31st March, and he got the MSMED registration on, let's say, in February or in January after the invoice. But the bill is outstanding, and as on date, the invoice is outstanding, and he is registered under MSMED Act on 31st of March. So what will happen? In that case, since he was not registered on the date of supply of goods or on the rendering of services under MSME, so this thing will not fall under MSMED Act for the purposes of computation of interest payment or for disallowance purposes, right? There can be some other scenarios also, like if you are following cash basis of accounting, income tax allows cash basis of accounting also. Maybe certain SSEs following cash basis of accounting and not mercantile basis. So of course that will not affect the income tax because you're already claiming the payments on cash basis of accounting. So one question here was, in case of presumptive taxation, what will happen? See, presumptive taxation is a section which starts with notwithstanding anything contained under the provisions of the Act, other provisions. And 43B also starts with the same clause. But since it is a specific provision, so in case of presumptive taxation, this disallowance won't attract. For presumptive taxation, this 43B disallowance won't attract. Right? Partial payment we have already dealt with. Suppose one more thing I would like to say. What will happen if there is, a capital expenditure? You are purchasing some fixed assets and you have not made the payment within the due date of 45 or 15 days. Then what happens? So in those cases, what will happen is that you will have to see that it is not an expenditure which is you are claiming for the purpose of 43B. There won't be any disallowance. It is a fixed assets. There are judgments also, numerous judgments which says that even if fixed assets has been claimed and there is certain violation, the depreciation is an allowable expenditure, but depreciation also won't be disallowed. So in capital expenditure, to my view, this will not attract. So there are a lot of questions I'll of course definitely take up in the end because there's still a lot to cover. So pardon me if I'm not taking all the questions. We will try to definitely cover it towards the end. So this was about income tax. We covered MSMED Act provisions of interest. We covered income tax provision section 43B. Now we cover the Companies Act part also. What is under Companies Act? There are certain provisions for MSMED under Companies Act also, which you need to know, those who are dealing with companies or those who are having companies. As per Schedule 3, you have to disclose certain things in the balance sheet. Total outstanding dues of micro enterprise and small enterprises, and total outstanding dues of creditors other than MSME. So first thing is that as on 31st March, you have to disclose in your balance sheet who are the creditors who are MSME and who are the creditors who are not MSME. So this is first thing. Next thing is that you have to give an aging schedule in the balance sheet for MSME creditors. What is the outstanding which is less than 1 year, 1 to 2 year, 2 to 3, more than 3 from the due date of payment? And here also there is one interesting classification. If you see MSME others, disputed MSME dues, disputed other dues. So now you have to see that you have got 3 acts to comply. In MSME, if you say this is under MSME, and under income tax, if you say this is not MSME, won't work. Under companies at balance sheet, if you say MSME, and if you don't say that, okay, it is my MSME, but for the purpose of MSMED or income tax, I will not disallow this expense. Again, there is a catch. So everything should be in sync. Because if you mention something here, this figure should corroborate with your income tax disclosures and also your, in income tax also there's a, in 3CD, there is a section, what is the payment, which is interest payments disallowed to the MSMEs. So dispute also, suppose if you create a dispute, what happens? You say that I have created a dispute and there is a dispute with the vendor. So that is the reason the due date is not fallen yet. So I will not disallow this expenditure on 31st of March. But in the company's balance sheet, you don't show it under disputed dues. So you have to be very careful that all these disclosures have to be in line with whatever you are declaring. I'm not going into details of these disclosures. You have to go through these disclosures as well. Right? There are several disclosures which have to be made. The last part of the domain is MSME Form 1. After that, we will go through the product. For companies, you have to file a form, ROC Form 1, which is a 6 monthly form, which has to be filed within 6 months, 31st October for the period April to September, and by 30th of April for the period October to March. In this, you have to give the details of all payments which are made to micro and small enterprises beyond 45 days. Here, there is no concept of 15 or 45. Even if it is 15 is allowed, 30 is allowed, there is a standard 45 days. So whatever payments are made after 45 days to these vendors, or even if some payment is not made, but 45 days due date has crossed, you have to report all this in the MSME Form 1 on the ROC portal with the reasons for such delay. So you can see there is so much correlation. You have to submit details to company law, in the balance sheet, to income tax. MSMED Act is there. Everything should be in correlation, and you cannot at one point of time you are saying that, okay, in MSME Form 1 I'll give something else, income tax something else, balance sheet something else. No, it won't happen like that. And this form, mind you, many companies are not even filing these forms, but there are hefty fines up to a maximum of 3 lakh rupees for non-filing of these forms. And we will see that all these domain things also, these compliances, how we can manage through Tally seamlessly. This is our next part of this session, will be about how from Tally we can generate these reports, that what is falling due, when it is falling due, how MSME Form 1 information can be generated, and so on. And after that product walkthrough, we will definitely take up all the questions and much more, which practically also we will share certain things, that how things are happening. So I think let's move to the product walkthrough. So Tally 4.1, the latest release, well, it helps both the cases, those businesses who are registered under MSME and those businesses who are dealing with MSME. Means if you are a seller who is registered under MSME, or if you are a buyer who is procuring goods or availing services from MSME vendors. So in both the cases, Tally helps you to generate several reports, which you will see that how it covers and correlates all the compliances and domain part which we discussed. Let's say a KBCL Private Limited is a company which is registered as a micro enterprise and holds a UDYAM registration certificate. So first we are dealing with where the seller side, where you are registered, you are a user, you are a seller, you are registered under MSME. So how you can configure your UDYAM details for the company and also the credit period for your customers. Okay, so let's have a look. This is a familiar screen. You can also mention your questions. You can also mention your questions in between on the Q&A tab. of course, we will be taking up towards the end regarding anything which you will be discussing, we will be discussing right now. So you go to the accounting features, you go to more details. There you will see there is MSME registration details. Under MSME registration details, you put your registration details. This is from seller perspective. Suppose you are a micro enterprise, you put your UDYAM registration number and save it, and you put the effective date. Suppose you can put, let's say you are registered from 1st of April 2023. So you put the effective date as 23 and you save it. Again, you go to more details. You will see that there is an option credit days allowed for micro and small parties. As per MSME Act, we know with credit period, maximum allowed is 45. With no credit period, it is 15. You can mention there in case there is any change later on, so you can change that also in the law. So this is about your configuration. Now you go to the ledger, you alter the ledger. Let's say a customer is there, Bandhan and Company, it is a debtor. There is no default credit period mentioned there. You can mention that your default credit period is, let's say, 60 days. This is between the buyer and seller. This is the written agreement which you are saying. So if nothing is mentioned, we assume that no written agreement. So this way you can see you can create your, you can register your UDYAM Aadhaar, and you can also update your customers UDYAM Aadhaar, and you can mention the credit days, that what is the agreed credit days. Law may allow 45 days, but you have mentioned 60 days. If you don't mention anything, then it will take 15 days as default. So if there is a vendor where you don't mention anything, it will take 15 days by default. Now we will see that how, just a sec. Yeah. You will see how you can print your UDYAM registration details on sale invoices and the reports. So you see, let's say you go to any sales voucher, any sales invoice which we have created. You go to this sales invoice, you go to print. You all know configuration, very simple. You go to the configuration screen. Once we go to the configuration screen, you just type UDYAM. It's there in the list. Show UDYAM registration number and enterprise type. Click yes. After that, you will see that your UDYAM registration number and registration type will be displayed on this invoice. You see just below the address, you can see UDYAM registration number and micro invoice. Micro is your type. Now suppose there is a global configuration also. You can go to the print configuration if you want that in all my reports my UDYAM number should be there. So you go there, you see show UDYAM number and enterprise type, you make it yes. You just make it yes, and now it will appear on all the reports along with address, your UDYAM number. Let's say we go to the stock summary report, we print the stock summary report. Suppose we need to give it to the bank or anyone, the stock summary report. So now you will see that below the address, your UDYAM registration number and the classification both are appearing. So this is one feature which has been introduced, and this is very important because when you are dealing with when you will be generating your invoice, so you obviously want your customer to know that whether you are MSME registered or not. So if in your invoice itself this MSME registration number and your classification is there, then the customer can easily understand that you are MSME registered, so they need to pay you as per the MSME norms also. This is one thing. Now we will see the bills receivable reports. Since we are right now discussing the part which is seller part, so we are dealing with the reports which are related to our customers. So many a times you see that we need to also know that who are our customers who are not paying on time, and since we are registered under MSME, we would like to know that who are the customers who are not paying in time, and we can also send them these reports, that this is the bills receivable report which we want to send you, so that you are aware that if you don't pay within next 10 days, 15 days, then you will be hit by the penal clauses of MSME Act, in this scenario. So for that, we need to check out the report which gives us the bills receivable as per MSME provision. As of now, under Tally, you all are aware that there are reports which gives you the due date receivable as per the normal due date, but we want the report as per MSME due date. So let's see how it can be done. You go to the normal display statement of accounts, outstandings, receivables. This we all know. Here, you will see that it is showing, let's say 2nd September is the current date, and the details of pending bills are coming, and it is showing the due dates as per the invoice and ledger, whatever is the due agreed terms. Now you go to the configuration and you will see show number of days till due date. This is an option, show number of days till due date. So you see what is being shown. Days till due date means, suppose today is 2nd September. Sorry, today is 2nd September. Yeah, 2nd September. So it will show you like that. Show number of days, we will move again. Show number of days till due date. And it will show you that as on 2nd September, since 7th September is the due date, only 5 days are left for my customer to pay as per the MSME, let's say, provisions, as per the due date. Now we go to the basis of values. Here you can also see there are pending bills. You can see bills due in upcoming days. Suppose I want to show that, I want to see that, say, show the bills which are due in the, let's say, next 10 days. In next 10 days, what are the bills which are becoming due, which are receivable? So it will filter it out and show you the bills which are due in the next 10 days. Let's say today is 2nd of September. So it will show you till 12th September, what are the dues. You can now share it on your, through email to your customers or through WhatsApp, or you can mail, print, whatever you want. So this is very important where you need to deal with the customers, and very important where you want to send it to the customers. Now, this was the part which we were dealing with, where we are sellers and we want to get reports related to our customers. Now, another very important part is where we are buyers and we are dealing with MSME vendors. There, the question of income tax and the company law, Form 1 and all these things come into picture. Let's see how this release 4.1 helps us in this scenario. Same situation, let's say this company has more than 15 vendors from whom you procure goods or avail maybe services, and those vendors are registered as MSME, micro and small. Okay. So first is we need to update their UDYAM registration details in the party master, in the accounting ledgers. In their ledgers, we need to update the UDYAM registration details of these vendors. We can update in single also and bulk. Let's see how it can be done. So you normally go to the alteration screen, ledger alteration. Let's say we take a party, Ganeshji Enterprises, Ganeshji TN branch we take, and we go to configure and set provide MSME registration details to yes. When we show, you will see that there the details will come. You can set alter MSME registration details, make it yes. It will pop up a box where you can put in the type of enterprise, let's say micro, and you can put in the UDYAM registration number, which is of course a predefined format, 19 digit with the state code and the effective date. Let's say it is effective from April 23 or maybe from Jan 24, it can be anything. So you can put in that effective date and then you save it. This is how you can do one by one. So now we see how we can do it. Multiple vendors at a time. Go to statutory reports, update party MSME details, go to sundry creditors, and let's say all items. So we get a list of creditors whose UDYAM registration is not yet updated. You can go to this update MSME details. You can see that you can go one by one also. You selected one, go to update MSME details. The same thing, it will show you type of enterprise and UDYAM registration. And once you enable this MSMEC, then the maintain balance bill by bill feature will automatically be enabled in the accounting ledger. Because without that, the report won't be generated. The reports which you will be seeing just after some time. So you mentioned the UDYAM number, also the effective date. Effective date is very important. As I told you, the invoices prior to effective date, don't fall under that criteria. So this is how you do one by one. You can, do it. Suppose if you want to change multiple things, so you can go to multi-alter. You can also mention the default credit period. You can mention the type of enterprise, UDYAM, everything for all of these here. You can mention everything. You can mention default credit period, and together you can do. In fact, you can also use the import facility, which is there in Tally, to do the bulk update of all the vendors. So through Excel, you can import, and you can this default credit period, this UDYAM registration number, instead of manually typing, you can just import all together in bulk for all the vendors. And this will be really very helpful, because the reports which will be generated, you won't be able to generate the report if the type of enterprise and UDYAM numbers and all is not mentioned therein, right? So next we move. Suppose first thing what we did was that we updated their UDYAM numbers. So now assuming that all the UDYAM numbers are updated, we have updated the UDYAM numbers of those vendors or creditors who are registered under MSME as micro or small. Now we move to the bills payable report along with due date as per MSMEC provision. We want to know that what is the bills payable, what are my bills payable which I have to pay within the due date as per MSMEC provision, irrespective of what is my due date. So let's see how it works. There's a save view actually. You can also go to the outstandings payables from statement of accounts. We have used the save view option. You go to configure. When you go to the bills payable, this is the bills payable report. Go to configure, show UDYAM registration number, show due on. Now here, there are three options. I would just like to tell. The first option is bill-wise details as per invoice, which was already there in Tally. The second option is MSMEC credit period, which is, let's say, the MSMEC credit period of 45 days or 15 days as per the MSMEC credit period. Third is bill-wise or MSMEC credit period. Bill-wise or MSMEC credit period means in a case where suppose your agreed term is 15 days or 12 days, but MSMEC allows you 45 days, then whatever is the lower, it will take that. So let's see how it works. First, let's go to the bill-wise. We have seen all these three reports. First, we go to the bill-wise details, show credit days. It will show you that it was due on 18th of September, 60 days is the credit days. It is as per your terms. Let's say in Param Computer, it is showing 0 day because there is no agreement. In Neeraj Enterprise, it is showing you 12 days. Suppose your agreed term is 12 days. So this is as per your normal agreed terms. Now we again go to configuration. We change it to bill-wise or MSMEC credit period, which is required as per the MSMEC law. There, if you see what happens, it comes to automatically 45 days. Earlier it was 60 days, but it comes to 45 days. Param Computer was 0. But as per MSMEC, since no agreement, it comes to 15 days. Neeraj Enterprise, although it is a written agreement, but since it is 12, lower of the two comes. If you go to this invoice of Ganesh Ji Enterprise and see what is the credit period given, it will show you 60 days. So you see, 60 days is the credit period, but it is showing 45 days because that is the maximum allowed under MSME Act. Now you go to Param Computer, you see it is allowing you, nothing is mentioned. So there is no written agreement. So normally you have to pay immediately because there is no, or maybe there is no written agreement. But as per MSMED, you are allowed 15 days. Similarly, if you go to Neeraj Enterprise, the agreed term will be 12 days. You can see in the ledger, 12 days is mentioned. So in that case, 12 days will be there. So आपने देखा कि agreed terms के हिसाब से अगर agreed terms कम है 45 से तो 45 days नहीं पकड़ेगा. Now you can see these are pending bills. Now if you want to see similarly, जैसे पहले हमने देखा था bills due in upcoming 10 days, तो we put 10 days, तो आपको दिखा देगा कि अगले 10 दिन में मेरे कौन कौन से बिल्स हैं जो ड्यू हो रहे हैं फॉर MSMEC. तो हमको देखना है भाई अगले 10 दिन में आई नीड टू मैनेज माय कैश फ्लो, तो आई कैन manage my cash flow. In the next 10 days, if I see these are the bills which are coming due, so I need to know, manage my cash flow कि भाई I have to make the payment to these vendors. मेरे को ये 10 या 15 vendors को अगले 10 दिन के अंदर, अगर मैं इस दिन के अंदर नहीं पेमेंट करूंगा तो मेरा इंटरेस्ट लाइबिलिटी आ सकती है, मैं फेल कर सकता हूँ MSMED के अंदर. आई हैव टू रिपोर्ट अंडर द कंपनीज फॉर्म 1. सो फॉर दैट दिस इज अ वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट रिपोर्ट कि आप किस तरीके से वेंडर के पेबल को भी देख सकते हैं. यू कैन सी एज पर MSMED क्या है. यू कैन ऑल्सो चेक वेदर नेक्स्ट 10 days, 7 days, 15 days में व्हाट इज कमिंग ड्यू. सो यू कैन प्रायोरिटाइज योर पेमेंट्स कि मेरे को पहले इसको करना है कि बाद में करना. दिस इज अ वेरी हेल्पफुल रिपोर्ट इन दिस सिनेरियो. नाउ वी मूव नेक्स्ट. As we discussed about form 1 of companies, so Tally has also given you this report कि कैसे हम ये form 1 की डिटेल निकालेंगे. You can go to MSMEC form 1 statement. ये statutory report से भी आप जा सकते हो. You will see it is showing you certain things. You go to basis of value. It is showing you all bills, क्योंकि आपको MSME 1 फॉर्म में ऑल बिल्स ही रिपोर्ट करना है, वेदर पेड और पेबल, इसलिए ऑल बिल्स आ रहा है. यू कैन गो टू कॉन्फ़िगर. यू सी ऑलरेडी बाय डिफॉल्ट क्रेडिट डेज प्रोवाइडेड जो है उसके अंदर में MSME क्रेडिट पीरियड लिया हुआ है विच इज 45 days फॉर MSME फॉर्म 1 पर्पस. वी हैव नॉट टेकन बिल वाइज और बिल वाइज वाला चीज. यू हैव टू शो क्लियर ऑन. यू कैन सी शो क्रेडिट डेज. दीज आर द फीचर्स विच यू कैन एनेबल एंड यू सी all credit days are 45 days. Whether it is due before 45 or after 45, it will consider 45 days for all MSME bills. And here, for all MSME bills, he will consider 45. Whether you have cleared, even if you have cleared, it was due on 4th July, it has cleared on 8th July, still it will show because you have to report this. Because it was payment was made with a delay. This is for April to September. You can go to the print return form. You will see it will show you the entire preview of MSME form 1. This is so beautiful that the entire form for these 6 months, April to September, or if it is October to March, will be filled with all details. Although you cannot directly upload it in the MSME portal or ROC portal, because the portal allows you, online form filling in the V3 scheme. But this entire report, can be used. And you can just copy from here and you can paste, or you can just type in or copy paste and on the portal, and the entire information is available for you immediately. So this is also a very important report. Now we come to another very important report, which is detail of expenses due in the current financial year that are likely to be disallowed under 43B. Suppose you want to know कि मेरे क्या expenses हैं as on 31st March. This is of course applicable on 31st March. You can of course see at any point of time, but this will be more relevant on 31st of March of any year. But you can 31st of March आने के बाद तो आप कुछ कर नहीं पाओगे, क्योंकि उस समय में तो आप देखोगे कि you will see कि 31st of March has elapsed and you cannot do anything. So today also if you see what are the expenses which जिसका ड्यू डेट कब आ रहा है, नहीं आ रहा है, what can be disallowed under 43B. So let's see how this report works. You go to same MSME report only, same MSME form 1 statement. You see there is a period is only October to March. You make the period full year. Let's say you see 1st April to 31st of March. You want to see report today, 31st of March. As on 31st March, what is likely to be disallowed? Go to configure. Here, based on credit days provided, you change again to bill wise or MSME. We discussed that for income tax purpose, bill wise or MSME is applicable. Go to the basis of values. Only pending bills, because income tax is considered कि 31st March को क्या pending है, जो payment आपने कर दिया उससे फर्क नहीं पड़ता. You can also save this view So any point of time during the year, if you want to see what is likely to be disallowed, you can anytime you can see from the save view. So expenses due but not paid, you will see it will show you that when it is coming due, when it can be disallowed, and so on. So if you have saved the view, you can see in the save view, any point of time you go, it will show you the updated report that this is how it is going to appear, right? So this is very important report where you want to see what is the expenses which are likely to be disallowed. Now, one more scenario, expenses which are due in the next financial year that are likely to be disallowed means the expense, we discuss certain scenarios where the expenses are due in the next financial year. Suppose the invoice is dated March, but it is becoming due on 15th of April. Let's say 1st March is the invoice and it is becoming due on 15th of April, 45 days after that date. So since it is becoming due in next financial year, how do you know what is becoming due in next year, whether it will be allowed in this year or not, when you need to pay? So for that also, there is a beautiful report which is there, the same report with a filter. The same thing, to go to MSME Form 1 statement, change the period. Here, instead of April to 31st March, you change it till, suppose, let's say 15th of May, 24. Let's say you take the current year, also maximum date of 45 days. From 31st March, 45 days comes to 15th May. Let's say you take 15th May. Here, you change this to bill-wise or MSME credit period. This for income tax purposes, we said that this is applicable. You applied the filter here. You have to put an advanced filter, bill, wherein the bill date is prior to, less than 1st April 24, but along with that, and the due date is greater than or equal to 1st April 24. So the bill date is prior to 24, the due date is greater than or equal to 1st April 24. Here you will see there are two invoices which are due in next year. So you can plan accordingly, you can save view as we discussed, so that any point of time during the year, if you want to see this, you don't have to create this filter again and again. You can save this view and you can keep it in save view. Whenever you go to the save view option, it will show you in the go to, you can see both these scenarios are there. You can just click and single click, it will give you the reports, updated reports at any point of time. So this is also a very important report for income tax purposes. We saw the report for MSME Form 1 compliance. We saw the report for MSMED Act. So this is something which is really, wonderful. And all these features are there. I would request all of you to, explore these features. Of course, the Tally team will be there. Your Tally partners will be there to, help you out in anything. If you want to, explore how you can use it further, it's very simple. So this was all about the MSME part of the features which are available in Tally 4.1. Of course, there is another part which we are not discussing it in today's session. Some e-commerce reports are there, because in the GSTR1 recently, e-commerce, when you are supplying through e-commerce, e-commerce operators, you need to supply certain information in the GST returns. So for that also a report has been brought in 4.1, which is very useful. So there are certain questions which will be there, which is some predefined FAQs are there, and then we will be taking up the question and answers from the floor. Just a sec. What to do in case MSME registration status changes? Well, if the MSME registration changes from, micro to small or small to medium, then you can update that. We saw in Tally that there is a feature where you can update the UDYAM number of the vendor or the customer and effective date. So when you give the effective date with the change, Tally will record it that from this date, the classification has changed from micro to small or small to medium or vice versa, whatever it is. How to update MSME status of parties using Excel import? Well, during mapping, the user can select the applicable from, type of enterprise and UDYAM number, and the details will be imported from Excel. What if buyer raises a concern and it took 10 days to resolve? Well, suppose the voucher date, normally what you enter is, suppose you receive the goods on 1st of March and you receive the goods on 3rd of February. So you enter, normally you do the voucher entry on 3rd of February, irrespective of the date of invoice, let's say. You enter on the date of receipt of goods. But you raised an objection and it took 10 days to resolve. And the resolution date of the objection was, suppose, 13th of February. So there is an option in Tally, effective voucher date. So you can mention 13th of Feb in the effective voucher date, and Tally will automatically do all the calculations from that effective voucher date. So this is an important feature. If suppose there is an objection and your voucher date is not the effective date because you raised an objection and so on, you can put the effective voucher date and all reports will be based on that. Do I need to file nil form 1 if I don't have any overdue? This is about MSME nil form 1 for companies. No, you don't need to file nil. If suppose there is no overdue, you have not delayed in any payment to MSMEs during the six month period, you don't need to file a nil form 1 on the ROC portal to the companies. If due days calculation differs from the voucher days, if suppose your calculation somehow differs from the voucher date because you have entered the voucher date on the invoice date, maybe you are entering the voucher on the invoice date itself, so you can mention the due date as the due days as the effective date field, specific date if you want. Form 1 mandatory for all MSMEC? No, it is only mandatory for companies, private limited or limited companies who are having delayed payment or overdue payment to a micro and small enterprise. So what are the benefits of MSME reports which we saw? That it enables the companies, the vendors, the customers to, identification of the MSME status. It gives you reports related to a Form 1 compliance, the 43B allowance, disallowance scenarios, the MSMED Act, what is overdue, what is getting overdue, so whether there is any interest application or not. And it helps you in recognizing the bills in advance, whether they are falling due, overdue, so that you can take appropriate action and you don't have to fall into any penal measures because of that. So these were the, the benefits of MSMED, the features of Tally 4.1. So I believe most of the features are there. You can just, check these at your end also. And believe me, these are really useful features. In fact, I myself used a lot of features as soon as this release was launched, and I found it really useful. So you all can also use this. So now I think we can take up the question and answers Q&A which are there, right? And Pankaj, if there anything related to the product, you can also chip in wherever. I will take the domain related questions and
yes sir, yes sir.
So I'll just take up through the Q&A tab, and just a sec. So whatever questions you are having still, if you have not posted, you can post it on the Q&A tab. I'm just checking. Yeah, so presumptive thing I've already covered. All the business and profession is covered. 44 AD, we have discussed this. What about old outstanding? We have discussed prior to 1st April 23, invoices prior to 1st April was not applicable. Interest we have already discussed. If the purchaser does not provide for interest in his books of accounts, then what should the auditor do? Well, Nareshji, the auditor, first of all, as an auditor, we should take, as an auditor, we should take declaration from the client that who are the vendors who are registered as MSME and under what classification. And, in that case, if we find that there has been a delay and if the interest is not provided, then depending on the materiality and all, you can think whether you need to qualify the report, whether you need to give an emphasis of matter, or whether you just want to disclose in the notes. That is a call which we have to take. There's one question on product. wanted to know how can we incorporate MSMEC details in invoice in TallyPrime. Sonali ji has asked.
So what is the question, sir? I think you're on
MSMEC
mute.
details in invoice. No.
Okay.
Pankaj, if you can just go through the Q&A also. So
How
the
we
next
can
Yes, I'm going
incorporate,
through the Q&A. I'm answering
how we
there
can
itself.
incorporate MSMEC details in invoice in TallyPrime, which we showed just now.
Yeah, I
So
think we
basically,
have already
yeah.
shown that.
Yeah, so Sonali ji, you can incorporate the MSMEC details in invoice in TallyPrime for the vendor and customer through the account ledger. You can individually go to the account ledger and you can mention the effective date and the UDYAM number there. And you can also go to the multi-alter option, and you can multiple ledgers also you can do it. And there's a third option of bulk import through Excel, right?
Correct.
What is this? This I think we have taken. Act applicable from 1st April 24. See, when you in the budget, when they say 1st April 24, it means assessment year 24-25. So for financial year, it is 23-24. Okay. Now we move that. Suppose invoice date is 1st October and paid on 30th December 23. Suppose the goods are received on 1st of October and the invoice and the payment is made on 30th December. Is it mandatory to pay interest? See, interest can be claimed by the the seller. If the interest is claimed by the seller, then the vendor the customer has to pay as per the MSMED Act. It is like that. But if it is there as per law, if it is there, then as per law, you need to accrue that interest and provide in the books, although income tax deduction is not available. Old outstanding, we have already discussed. Interest is applicable from when? Interest is applicable from expiry of the due date. Well, someone has asked, can we only issue check and tell him to deposit after 2 months? Is it okay? Well, see, that is a question which I can't answer here, because you cannot ask someone that to deposit and all. I can just tell you one thing legally. I'll just answer it in a different manner, that if suppose you issue a check, let's say, and the check is not encashed, let's say due to any reason whatsoever, and it comes in the BRS, and you have issued a check within the due date. So for 43B purposes, there is a Supreme Court judgment also earlier, and very recently there is a judgment of Sparrow Security Services, IT Amritsar, sometime back, which says that if you have tendered the check, then for the purpose of 43B, that should be taken as the date of payment. But this thing may be litigated, but there are precedents in the past. In fact, there's a CBDT circular of 1979 also, which speaks something like that. If you have tendered something to the government through check, even if it is encashed later, then it can be, considered as a payment. 43B, we have discussed. 43BH is applicable to traders. No, it is not applicable to traders. It is only applicable to purchases made from manufacturers or services available from service providers. If a supplier obtained MSME registration and a bill from him before registration is outstanding beyond due date, will it be disallowed? I already discussed that if a bill is before his registering as MSME, then it won't be disallowed. I did not get this question. What about pure transaction in money wale creditors? I did not get this question. I did not understand this. Money wale creditors, I don't know. What about if running balances as a party is not paying bill to bill? So you will have to, the onus is on you. If you are not maintaining bill by bill balances, then the onus is on you. Either you maintain FIFO basis and you have to then find out that what is there. But it is always advisable to maintain bill by bill. If you are maintaining running account also, then you have to, onus is on you to check out that what are the bills which are outstanding. Maybe FIFO basis is the best for you. If I make audit fee provision, the bills comes after September, should the expense be disallowed? No, no, no. See, you are making a provision, but the bill is not due yet. When is the bill due? After rendering of service. 15 or 45 days from rendering of service. The audit will happen, let's say in September. So the bill will become due after that. So you don't need to disallow it. If the due date has not even arrived, maybe by the time you are doing the audit, right? This I have already discussed. Kindly do share recording. That, of course, I think the team will share the recording with on appropriate forums. I want to make an entry of bank charges to claim GST. How can I do that? This is not related to this session, so I'm just skipping this question as of now. Is there a column showing nature of business activities of vendor like manufacturing or trading of service provider? I think he's asking about the product. This is a question where they have asked Pankaj whether there is any option currently where you can show the nature of business of the, like we are showing small, medium and micro, whether there is an option.
Correct. So basically, currently, it is only the enterprise type, the MSME type that we are showing. But we will be taking this into future releases.
Okay. So being a registered MSME under micro trader, O2 MSME medium pending due on 31 March, disallowance will happen. If suppose you are a trader, Pushpender ji, suppose if you are a trader, but you are purchasing from a MSME vendor who is registered as medium. So under medium, there is no disallowance. It always depends from whom you are purchasing. Whether you are micro or small doesn't matter. If you are purchasing from a medium registered MSME enterprise, then this disallowance won't happen. 45 days start from invoice date or from date of acceptance of invoice. See, neither invoice date nor from date of acceptance of invoice. It is from the date of delivery of goods or, the rendering of services. One more thing is very important for all of you to note, that how will you record that what is the date of delivery of goods? Because this due date happens from date of delivery of good, irrespective of invoice. Suppose मैंने invoice 1 फरवरी को इशू कर दिया था और माल मैंने भेजा 15 फरवरी को, जो आपके यहाँ पहुंचा है 16 फरवरी को, तो 1 फरवरी की इनवॉइस इज इमटेरियल. 1 फरवरी की इनवॉइस इज इमटेरियल फॉर एमएसएमई पर्पस. व्हाट इज मटेरियल इज कि आपने 16 फरवरी को गुड्स रिसीव किया. द गुड्स वर रिसीव्ड ऑन 16th of February. Now you need to have some document. Maybe you are having a system of GRN, goods receipt note, or you have a system wherein on the invoice or challan or consignment note you are keeping a record that ये 16th को आया था. You have your e-way bill document. So you have to keep a record that this is the date on which the invoice were delivered, the goods were delivered. From that date, this this 45 days will happen, right? Similar in case of an objection, you just don't tell someone कि मेरा तो verbally एक तो objection हो गया था, goods were not goods were there was some dispute in the goods, and in those goods there was an objection. So it doesn't work if you say verbally it is an objection. There should be a communication. Maybe you have written a mail, maybe you have sent a note, something that there is an objection due to this reason. And when this objection is cleared, there should be a both way communication that yes, this objection has been cleared on this day. This issue is resolved. What if supplier does not inform that he is minor or small? Do we need to ask all our suppliers? Yes, Mohitji, you need to, as a prudent measure, you need to send a mailer or a communication to all your vendors to confirm whether they are registered under MSME or not and what is their classification. Let's say if no one informs you, you can also mention many companies what they are doing. I'll just tell you practically. They are sending a mail to their vendors that whether they are registered, they have to inform within a time span of let's say 3 days, 4 days, 7 days. within which if no reply is received, it will be deemed that they are not registered. So, if no reply is received, then it can be deemed. Because as auditors also, we use these communications to assure ourselves that whether this is, whether these are the persons who have responded, these who have not responded and the deemed date has passed. So we fairly assume that, okay, they are not registered. So you can do this kind of a thing. There is one question. Please advise computing of interest for MSME dues and updating interest rate applicable in the master. I think it is asking about the product, that in product, whether you can update the rate interest and whether you can calculate the interest which is due for MSME vendors.
Currently, in this release, we have not considered the interest part of it. I think that will be part of the upcoming releases.
Okay. So it's good that you all are asking this thing, and it's a feedback for team also, which they are working on numerous things which they will be updating in the next release. They will try to update in the next release. Well, regarding the payment of check date and credit date, I have already discussed. Of course, but when you make the payment, you should know one thing, that you should have that much sufficient bank balance in your account that you can make the payment to the vendors. But this thing you have to check it out with your consultants also, because this is a litigated area. If buyer has claimed the interest, then can he write off the interest after 3 years? See, the MSMED Act asks you that you are liable to pay interest, and if the customer claims from you, if the vendor claims from you, then you are liable to pay. If the vendor claims, then you are liable to pay. But in income tax, you won't be disallowed any deduction. You won't be allowed any deduction. So you can write it off, it's your call, but the MSMED Act says that you are liable to pay. If the vendor demands it. The due date of Form 1 is for 6 months, April to September, it is 31st of October. And for October to March, it is 30th of April. GST will also be applicable on delayed payment of interest. Yes, as per GST norms, Section 15 of CGST Act says that if any interest is charged for delayed payment, then the rate which is applicable on the goods will also be applicable on the interest. For traders, it is MSME Act is applicable to the traders retail only for the purpose of certain benefits which are related to interest subsidy and priority sector lending, but this interest payment for delayed payments over due date is not applicable. Do you have any flow chart of PDF on how to make alterations in Tally? I think Pankaj, there is a help file also. Release notes are available on the website. You can maybe tell about that.
Correct. I think people can visit a Tally help section of Tally website, and there we have posted all queries related to this aspect, and you can go through that. It will be helpful.
Okay.
Pankaj, while the questions are being taken, if possible, if you could just put in the chat box so that people can refer. We still have 188 people there. So.
Sure.
So next question is whether loan, I understand you want to ask about loan transactions. No, this loan transactions, MSME does not affect loan transactions or monetary transactions only. It affects the receipt of goods from manufacturers and service providers providing services. Seller is a trader. Is he liable to pay to his vendor who is MSME registered as per MSME provisions? Yes, Pankaj ji, in my view, very clearly, even if you are a trader, the seller is a trader. But if, let's say, we are talking from the point of view of purchaser, if you suppose the seller is a trader who purchases goods and sells, but he is purchasing from a manufacturer, then in that case, he is liable to pay to the vendor as per the MSME provisions, because the vendor is registered under MSME as a MSME registered vendor as manufacturer.
So I think mostly the questions are repeated on what.
Repetitive. Yeah, I'm just checking that only. I'm just taking up only those questions which have not
Not
been
discussed.
discussed.
Hmm.
Can we do check, all done? If I purchase later, MSME level what percent increase in form, third there is two categories of manufacturing and service. So we are in how can we get registered at traders? You can get the registration, is not a problem to get registration. Same as per the UDYAM portal, you can go and check and get registration as a trader. MSME have not received payment within the due date. What steps should be taken? You can go to MSME portal, MSME Samadhan portal, and you can lodge a complaint there. Financial year we have already discussed. Income tax we have discussed. How it affects no account books and sales is less than 1 crore. See, if you are claiming any deduction under income tax, less than 1 crore, above 1 crore does not matter. If you are purchased from MSME, you are claiming any expense other than if you are under presumptive. Suppose if you are below 1 crore and you are under presumptive and not maintaining any books of accounts, in that case, this won't affect, the disallowance won't happen. Registration under MSME is compulsory. No, registration is not compulsory. It is voluntary. It is voluntary. Applies registered under small supplying credit to traders and manufacturers. Is there any provision? Any forms to collect and keep maintaining the supplier or non-MSME? Any forms to collect and keep maintaining? We already discussed that you can, ask for declarations, and you can ask for declarations from your vendors whether they are registered or not, and keep it. I think most of the questions are similar, and the others have been answered, Komalji. I think
Yes,
these were the things which I can
we
see.
could, yeah, and anyway, the recording will be available, and we have received many requests on the recording itself. Thanks to you, because the session was so informative, and it could be like a guide for the MSME domain as a whole. Should we, and we have already crossed the time. Should we take one question? We have 4 raised hands. Let me see if
Sure.
they still have a query.
Sure.
Pankaj sir is also raising hand. Pankaj sir, is your query yet to
Yes,
be answered?
Pankaj. Yes, Pankaj.
Mr. Moin Bora, Mr. Ashok Patel. So if you have a query, I've unmuted you. You can ask the question directly. Okay, maybe not. Maybe the queries
Maybe
are
their
answered.
questions were resolved by the time.
Yeah,
They might have raised
actually,
them, and by the
this
time
is
their
the
queries
thing,
might have.
because that is why the
Yeah.
systematic thing always helps. Thanks a lot.
In
And
fact,
the coding reaction says it all, the hearts and the thumbs ups and the claps. And
No, it was a really interactive session, and thanks to all the participants also for a very, very patient hearing. In fact, I could see the flurry of questions and very, very good and intelligent questions coming up. In fact, we can make an entire FAQ out of that, and it will be very
exactly, and
helpful.
definitely look at the reactions. I really want to capture this. Right.
And with the, I hope I'm able to justify the session. And 2, 3 things I would just like to inform that we all should have a system, a proper system in place to, to capture these transactions, and to, review the reports regularly and sensitize our team that how they can, keep updated, because these things are going to increase. Under GST also, you are already aware there is a clause of 180 days where if you don't pay to the vendor within 180 days, this is disallowed. The credit is disallowed. So these all are in a way, that you have to have a strong and robust system. So whatever system you are using, and if you are using Tally, you have seen that there are a lot of things already there. So I would suggest that you should, implement all these features. Yeah. Over to you, Komalji. That's all from my side.
Thank you so much, Vikash sir. And it's so heartening to see we still have over 160 people and listening till the end of the questions. So thanks a lot to the audience. Thanks a lot, Vikash sir, for the domain part specifically, because we can see the majority queries are on the clarifications of the same. Thanks a lot, Pankaj, for being there. Thank you, Rajagopal sir, for being there. I could see Pankaj was typing in many queries. So thanks a lot for your time. I will now end this session. Thank you.